Hello and welcome to my video on gender communication. On my second slide, you can see that we start with men and women in the workplace and their communication and how it's verbal and nonverbal, the stereotypes that exist for both men and women, how these stereotypes stop women from reaching their full potential, and how that ends up making leadership styles conflict. Men and women communicate in very specific ways, but often find themselves sharing some of the same traits or issues and stereotypes as each other. According to the Wood text, women often see those stereotypes such as sex, objects, mothers, children, and iron maidens. Men, however, have a much more positive stereotype in that they are sturdy oak, breadwinner, and fighter in the workplace. In truth, men and women have some variations in their leadership styles, and these stereotypes, both good and bad, should not get in the way of the decisions for promotion and hiring. Now on slide 3, we see the different kinds of leadership styles. There is androgynous, which means using both male and female. There is that words are used as competition. Women tend to be emotionally based, and women also tend to try hard to blend into their jobs. Now, leadership also depends on the position. For instance, there are different expectations of Hillary Clinton as First Lady than there are of the manager of a small company, regardless if it's male or female. Here I think back to the article that I shared a few weeks back in regards to Hillary Clinton and Sarah Netanyahu. Even though they were both First Ladies, the expectations were clearly different. For those of us that work outside of politics, the people in the workplace help to define leadership styles and expectations, while the men and women work to meet them. The styles may vary in gender, sex, their position, role, power, and many other things. Those differences make leadership hard for some women. Now, in slide 4, we start to see about isolation, and that women often feel isolated, which in turn makes men feel like it's an us against them. They have to prove something, per se. So women end up working harder for their positions, and that makes a huge communication gap for men and women. Isolation is not just a word that women use to show their leadership style. Much like the woman in the O'Neill write-up that I referenced in my bibliography, she had an increasing feeling of insecurity because she was always referenced as just the PR gal. In reality, many women feel isolated because they cannot find a happy medium that gives them respect from both men and women. As women end up becoming more Iron Maiden in their leadership styles, men take that us against them mentality. There is a clear competition, one that must be won by words and promotions in today's society. Even though women may have to work harder for those promotions, it does not make them less qualified. Take, for instance, the women in the Lombardico article, also referenced in my bibliography. They overcame their obstacles and became highly effective women in their field. Now on slide 5, we start to see the differences in communication for men and women, males and females. But here we're going to focus on how the women have to change their leadership style. They end up meeting a glass ceiling, and that their leadership styles attempt to meet the demand of being more like men, but they still fall short, according to an article by Connick. Male leadership styles remain strong, though, as society seems to see them as natural-born leaders, as we can see by fact that we have never had a female president or vice president. Now, in slide 6, we start to see the barriers in communication, and we start to discuss what we can do about them. There's finding solutions to gender communication and realize it's not a competition and that words sound different to different people. We know there are barriers in communication at home and work. The workplace ones may be harder to overcome with rules and policy that do not allow for open-minded thinking. When women and men try to bring their point to the table, their tone of voice as well as word choice can affect the impact they have on the group, regardless, of course, if it's men or women. However, men do tend to be more judgmental as a woman does not speak as strongly as they do. It is important to understand your audience so that communication appears flawless. Now on slide 7, you see the barriers. We understand they are not simple. and that we have different ways of communicating with words, which often gives a lack of trust with the opposite sex, and that can go both ways. Assumptions, and again with the stereotypes. The barriers are not simple. They can range from a different way of wording a simple task to a lack of trust to assumptions and stereotypes. It can affect both men and women and how they communicate with each other, promote, and even hire, regardless of who is in front of them. It can stop relationships before they even start. In the Weburate series, we learn that Tyler attempts to have Melanie join them and his friends for a happy hour after work. Tyler was just trying to be polite, but Melanie took it as sexual harassment. If a woman decides to sit quietly in her office or cube, men may see her as emotional or worse, so her behavior is attributed to some sort of hormonal imbalance, when in reality she may just have a lot of work to do. The barriers exist and draw lines between men and women, and men and men, and women. It seems it has no bounds. Now on slide 8, you see strategies to overcome these barriers, which means changing stereotypes, changing how society is perceiving men and women, gain a greater diversity in hiring practices. Top leaderships must always lead by example, and open communication is always a must. Strategies include working in groups of men, women, and any other sex or gender that is in the workplace. Effective leadership and communication strategies must be promoted in the workplace. Managers need to give equal respect to men and women in the same position. It's equal pay for equal work. They must keep the floor open in meetings and allow points of view to be heard. We must lead by example. Leaders must be open-minded and strong-willed. Effective leadership allows all to have input, seek promotion, work in an environment that is safe and effective for all. In communication, if there is one thing one leadership must do, it is openly communicate in a manner that includes men and women equally. This shows the workplace that each has a value and that barriers are unnecessary. Now in slide 9, we see more strategies here. So strategies are encourage skills for greater communication, acknowledge differences, understand where the speaker and listeners are coming from, as well as how the listener hears what you are saying. In order to overcome the barriers between genders, we must consider all aspects of the communication. We know that meaning starts in the mind of the speaker. Depending on how the receiver actually hears the words, the meaning changes. The barriers to communication here can stem from the physical separation between work groups, even background noise, the language used in conversation, allowing emotions to get in the way, poor sending and receiving skills, and stress, according to Canaan. Canaan also offers that we must understand the different cultures, add a different aspect to communication, gender communication in the workplace. If we consider all of these and our emotions behind our words, we may be able to overcome barriers in gender communication. In another interesting article by Maddock and Parkin, we learn how women overcame obstacles by recognizing their limitations and exceeding expectations. In this, they discuss that corporate managers can play a significant part in creating gendered cultures and gender dynamics. Keeping this in mind, we find that the gender obstacles are part of the communication process. The lack of attention to the spirit, informal norms, and values of an organization has led to many equality programs being sabotaged by both management, male and female staff. In essence, in order to overcome those obstacles, one must understand the person, the culture, the individual, and as communication happens, because it happens without even speaking a word. In the article by Lombardo, when the men did not realize is that the women were able to recognize where they were weak, and they were able to enlist the help of others to ensure their success. Now, slide 10 has some how to promote effective leadership, having open working areas, so open cubes and offices when possible, having stress-reducing techniques available at work to enable that open mind, treating everyone equally, and this means subordinates as well as upper management must not use stereotypes, and management always leads by example and treat other managers and team members with the respect they have earned or deserved. Slide 11 talks about promoting these effective strategies. And in doing so, we must promote affirmative action policies, ensure they are in place, hire women with qualifications. That means that we hire them because they are worth it. They can do the job. Diversity training and increasing awareness, continued strong personal commitment from all. Also, equal opportunity laws, EEO rights, and just to name one other law was the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Family-friendly policies also allow men and women equal time off. These were all referenced in our wood text, and they give equal treatment or better treatment to equalize the standards between men and women. Now, on slide 12, we're going to do a little bit more promoting effective strategies. We're going to address inequality, and that means that men are not the only ones in the director's chair, CEO, or presidents. Embracing change allows women to show their shine, if you will. Networking at the workplace is often us against them again. This means that women are not included in most circles unless they can embrace the man's lack of thinking or their sports. Welcoming environments are necessary and bring about effective communication in the workplace. There are norms for men and women. Some are stereotypical and some are not. Regardless of the norms, open to the differences and likenesses of both to generate a team spirit by organizing events that include both men and women to the best degree possible. And as I mentioned, flexible work schedules are important. This is also highlighted on that slide where we address inequality, networking, recognizing norms that both men and women have, and flexible work schedules. Now on slide 13, I am sharing just a few things that I found. A quote, the first quote about a woman speaking so many words is from Canaan. And I think it's important to note that men and women communicate in different ways. When women want to get their point across, they may overspeak, while the men will be direct in nature. Words can be emotional, educated, even hurtful if we do not consider gender, sex, and even culture. There is no one way to communicate. We need to think before we speak, move, or give a speech, because everything we say and do reflects in our words. Now, you may wonder about the quote by Bill Cosby at the bottom, that men and women belong to different species and communications between them is still in its infancy. To me, this means that it seems not a bit off-center, but I think that what he means is that we are alike and that our communication style is going to continue to evolve. We are still learning the basics almost on a day-to-day basis. Rules change, people change, society changes. It is a continuous learning requirement for both men and women. Now, slide 14 is a quote that I thought was very interesting and worked well. It is past time for women to take their rightful place side by side with men in the rooms where the fates of peoples, where their children's and grandchildren's fates are decided. I think that this speaks volumes and says that we need some more room for thought and communication and changes. Finally is our conclusion. I think it's important that we take with us that these are important things to discuss, and we don't end up like you see on the picture over here, where the men and women are talking through a can, and clearly from his face, he's not understanding what she's talking about, and she feels like she's communicating to her own degree. I think it's important, as I said, to ignore stereotypes, allow room for a woman to be a mother outside of the stereotype, but still be an excellent leader. So she can be a mother at home and an excellent leader at work. I think it's important to continue to allow men to be strong leaders, but to allow them a feminine communication skill if that's where they excel. I think we need to embrace techniques that are outside the box and use tools to ensure communication both at work and the company outings. It is perfectly acceptable for a woman to be in a leadership position and be strong, intelligent, open-minded, and willing to fight for her subordinates, just as those male stereotypes are so common with. She must also be compassionate in a way that shows empathy when necessary, And it is also acceptable for men to do the same things, embracing each other's techniques and styles to find a gendered leadership style that enables the entire workplace to work in harmony. Thank you for your time.